there goes the first boat to leave the island. The big fishing boat at the dock. Looks like they got approval to leave. They're heading for Panama. Gonna settle up in Bocas del Toro, I guess, and do their 2-week quarantine there before they can leave the boat again. But they're just leaving the dock now, getting ready to head out the channel.
Couple of friends gone.
Get tired of waiting. Rather wait someplace new.
Oh yeah, but it's better here staying quarantined in Panama City.
Yeah, we've been to Panama. They haven't, so they don't know.
I think so.
For now, I'm much happier to be here.
Oh, look, only the water for swimming. Panama? It is sad.
Yep. We don't have water like that for swimming in Panama. Not that.
Okay, no in the boat. No for the quarantine.
But so it begins. The movement of the boats. Not sure how happy they're going to be when they get to Panama, but oh well, everybody needs to shake it up once in a while, so imagine we'll hear from them once they arrive, see how they like it, but we're going to stay tight here for a while. We could go back to Panama also, we found out, but yeah, we've got to sit in Cologne basically for minimum 2 weeks, and doesn't really strike my fancy right now. I'd rather be here in the sunshine and crystal clear water, so we stay right here, happy in Colombia. Something you guys are always asking me about is how do I manage to keep so many plants on board on a sailboat? Well, today we're going to talk about just that, so stick around. So there are a lot of reasons that you'd want to have plants on board a boat. First and foremost for me is, of course, that I like them. They make the place feel much more like a home, more comfortable. Of course, having plants downstairs it's nice because you have the color, you have them freshening the air down there, and it just makes for a happier environment, much like you would have in a house. It adds color and just good feelings. So why wouldn't you? The problem is, not all plants are good to grow on a boat, especially a sailboat. You have to factor in the considerations that when we sail, we get wet. We get a lot of saltwater splash, so we have to be very mindful of what we put up in these corners up here. We have to be careful of anything we put in the cockpit, and even down below, make sure we don't forget windows are open or anything like that. Of course, when we sail, the biggest factor is the boat's heeling over, and if we do go over a wave and it shimmies or moves too fast or anything like that, everything has to be secure. You don't want to have your plants falling over. I mean, I've had that in the past where you weren't expecting something, so in other words, be prepared. But when something happens you weren't expecting and it does knock a big plant over, there is nothing worse than being in the shit, because that's when the weather hits, or that's when stuff happens. It's never on a calm day. It's always when you're in the shit. And something will fall over, and the next thing you know, you've got a plant and ground everywhere. Not fun to have to go clean up, especially if it's down below, because usually if the boat's doing that, not all the crew are feeling, you know, 100%, so it's not the best time to ask them to go clean the stuff up. So all factors that we're going to go over today, and how we keep the plants locked down, stable, safe, out of the way, and not a problem. Now, there's different types of plants that we keep on board. We're getting much more into consumable plants as well now, because obviously as we're traveling, and just like now, we're in a situation where we can't always get what we want on shore. We're not always allowed to go to shore. So we're using that as a time to refine the types of plants that we want to grow on board. Some plants we have purely for cosmetics because we really like them. They're enjoyable, they're good for the air we breathe, etc. They bring ambience to the boat, a nice sense of being and just a pleasant atmosphere. Like this girl we've got right here. This is Maya, and some of you might remember last year we found Maya in the rainforest in Guatemala when we were up in the Rio Dulce. And Maya has been here ever since and gone through several stages of growth. And you know, sometimes when we were sailing she had a bit of a hard time because we did take some splashes and she got wet a couple times, lost a couple leaves, but she always bounces back. And we found Maya as literally a coconut shell in the rainforest that had already seeded in the ground. So we picked her up, and we were actually using her as a decoration in one of the properties we were filming at the time. And when we were finished, we decided to adopt Maya and brought her back to the boat. We knew it's a coconut palm tree, she's going to want to get big, but so far we've managed to keep her down and just train her that, okay, this is your environment here, and we just give her a haircut once in a while and trim her back so that she stays this size. But you can see that Maya is very happy here, and she grows right down through the back of the base here. This is where the back of the coconut shell was. It finally fell off and we took it out and then put in new soil. So she's been growing here just lovely and keeps coming up with new leaves, like you see this one right here. So sometimes we trim a branch off, as you can see we've done here, because we don't want her to get too big or too tall. So when we have too many branches, almost like what we're getting now, I mean, we have some new ones coming up here, so we'll probably trim one of these outside ones off just so they don't take over our cockpit here. We like to keep her focused in one direction. Underneath Maya, she shares her pot with another little plant we've got here that I fondly call Bogota. It's not from Bogota, but she is from Colombia, here in San Andres. But I like the name Bogota, so what the heck, right? But she's been here for over almost a year now, so doing very well, very happy. These are plants that like indirect light. They are from the floor of the rainforest, you know, so they grow in shade as well, and that's something you have to consider. You want to get plants that don't need direct sunlight all the time, otherwise they have to stay out, and you don't have enough places to keep your plants, all of them outside. We do have some flowers that need to be outside, so we look after them accordingly. Bogota just opened up a whole new sprout down here. This is all brand new right here, so that's a good sign. Good sign that she's happy. Some plants, like I said, are just purely for decorational purposes because we like them, and they just add some color and a bit of more happiness to our environment here. Like these guys here, and I'm not even sure the names of some of these plants, but they're just very, very pretty, and they are growing very happily on the boat also. You can see what we have done is we've kept them in a low pot. We don't want high pots or round pots or anything with a tapered bottom because they would fall over too easily. So you can see what I've done is I've targeted these types of square pots or rectangular pots here that have a low center of gravity, and we keep the earth down as low as possible for the plants inside, just depending on what's in the plants. We try and find ones that will grow together, and these guys are doing good. We got our Bougainvillea here right here, and this Bougainvillea tree has done exceptionally well on the boat. It's been here for over 2 years now, but you can see it just tends to lose all of its leaves sometimes. But when it is in full bloom, it is absolutely stunning. It comes out with tons of these magnetic, like pink flowers. It's just unbelievable to see it. It's so happy. But sometimes it just goes through these cycles where it loses all of its leaves, or it gets too much wind, and you know, it's a delicate plant, so they will blow off when it's time for it to start reblossoming new leaves. And as you can see, if you look close, it's starting to get some brand new ones right now. This guy is another colorful tree that we keep on board. I call him my happy tree, because whenever things are questionable on board, if you're worried about something or anything, that is typically when he blooms, and you see some of these blossoms just coming out. But when it goes into full blossom, all these pink flowers come out and they are stunning. I think I've shown you guys pictures of the plant when it's been in full bloom before. And it did the same thing when we were coming across the coast of Nicaragua that day, and everybody was scared to death, you know, what was going to happen, are we going to get hit by pirates, anything like that. That was the day this guy decided to go into full bloom. All the flowers came out within 24 hours. And when that happens at times like that, the crew just looks at that and it gives them great comfort, you know. They can instantly feel like, wow, everything going to be all right, man. And all worries just seem to disappear. When you put something that beautiful in your midst when everything else is hitting the fan, it's nice to have around, I can tell you that. So yeah, we love this little guy. So this is some of our decorative flowers. I'm gonna move them over here for a minute, and we'll go on to these guys. This is some of our edibles, and this guy is brand new. And look at this. We literally grew this guy from one of these. An old dried tomato we just rotted and let the seeds sit in here. And this is our first tomato plant. Now, the problem is, as you can see, it grows fast. This guy came out of nowhere really fast, but we've already got our first blossom tomato here. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? We're growing tomatoes on a boat, guys, on a sailboat no less. The only problem with this type of plant is it's going to become very top heavy. Well, as you can see, that's already going to become a problem with this one, especially when there's any breeze. He's very tall and a lot of windage. So we need to start training this plant fast to stay low and grow outwards, not upwards. So in order to do that, we're just going to stay below the level of the first tomato and just start trimming him back a little bit, like right about here. And right about here. And just to start focusing some of the energy closer to the middle of the plant. Now, the other thing that we grow on board that is an edible that's one of my absolute favorites, I've always grown these on board, is basil. And we've got these guys here, which are brand new, and this guy here, which we've had on board for about 4 months now. And we take the seeds from this one and start growing them in other pots. We got a couple different variances of basil here now, but basil is one of my absolute favorite plants because, first of all, it grows like a weed. It's very aromatic. I mean, as soon as you touch the leaves or the wind blows them or anything, it just floods the boat with this beautiful smell of basil. I love that smell, I can't tell you. But every couple of days, we just start plucking off the leaves that are the biggest ones on the plant. And you'll see right behind them already, there's little ones already growing. So now we just plucked this one the other day, so I'm not going to take too much more off at this moment. But any great big ones, just make room for little ones. Then the little ones will get more sun, they get more nutrients from the plant, and they grow faster and faster. So it's almost like the more you pick it, the faster it grows. And these leaves, these are great for anything. We use these as seasonings in all kinds of things, including, of course, pasta and pestos. I mean, Madalena is Italian, of course, so she loves to make pastas and pestos, and fresh pestos we have on board now with our basil that we actually grow on board. It doesn't get any better than that. But these ones are all brand new, and these grew from seeds. And you can see if you look inside the pot, they've actually seeded all kinds of new ones that are just starting to stem up at the bottom of the pot. These are amazing plants. They grow so fast, and they are so great to use in your daily life on board. if you've never researched or investigated basil, I highly recommend you do so, because the benefits of eating basil on a regular basis are unbelievable. Now the basil, when they are young, they like lots of sun, so we keep them over on this side of the boat. And the reason for that side of the boat is because right now we're just north of the equator and the sun is going overhead from the starboard side of the boat. So as we're pointed east in the easterly trade winds, the sun always goes down this side of the boat. So anything that we want to have lots of direct sunlight but not too much wind, we put under this window, because as you can see, it's under full sun right now, whereas this side is partial sun and partial shade. So things that don't need direct sun all day or have been getting enough sun for the last while, we put over on this side. But next on our list is these guys, and this is something we just started growing recently after doing some research. And these, my friends, are chili peppers, red chili peppers, just like what you heard of, the red hot chili peppers. And we've started out with 3 plants here, but we have a bunch of new seeds that we're hoping are going to come up. In fact, we've planted a bunch of them in some of these new pots here, so we're just waiting for them to blossom up, and then we're going to fill this one with chili peppers. And chili peppers, if you haven't seen, when these grow up, I mean, they like to grow in bushels like this, so they'll become a big bush, and it will look a lot like this plant here with the red flowers, except they will all be chili peppers, which are edible. And if you eat these chili peppers a couple of times a week or something like that, you can use them for seasonings on food, you can have them as a little snack if you want, anything you want, but they are so good for you in so many ways. Again, I'm serious, if you haven't researched them, you should. And they're easy to grow. As you can see, these guys are coming up very fast, and there's our first real chili pepper starting to blossom right there. Now from there, we're going to take you inside, because we got some different types of plants down below that are good for indoor, outdoor, for growing in the shade, and focus on those a little bit. Now, as I said before, most of the plants that we grow inside are, well, decorative or personal purposes, you know, just for the sake of having something nice and green to grow around and make the environment feel more homey inside. Like these guys. I have always grown a lot of bamboo on the boat, and it loves it down here. And you can see, I mean, I've had this tree in here for years, and it just keeps growing up to the roof, so we chop it off and replant the stalks down somewhere else in this pot. So we've got them all growing. This is all bamboo now, starting from this original tree in the middle. And it's very happy. It very much likes it here. It'll take any amount of water, no problem at all. I mean, the bamboo normally just grows in water on its own, but we've put them in soil now and just keep lots of water in the soil. This is a plant with 1,000,001 uses. There is nothing that you can't heal with aloe. I mean, it's like a miracle plant, seriously. If you haven't researched it, again, do some research. The things that you can do with this, I mean, the mildest of basically is even the ability to cure burns and help scars heal and open cuts, wounds, anything like that. If you take one of these pieces and just break it off, you'll see that there's a gel inside. And that gel, you can wipe on a burn on your skin, or you can put it over an open wound, a cut, anything like that, and it will help heal any problem with you very, very quickly. I mean, as an example of that, a few years ago, I was working on my engine, and when I wasn't paying attention, it overheated, and it overheated to almost meltdown point. And I needed to bleed off the heat very quickly. I realized that something leaked out in the coolant, and I went around in here and opened up the top coolant. I had on a glove, like a silicone glove, but my arm wasn't protected. I was just using the glove because the cap was hot, but my arm wasn't protected, and there was so much pressure in the engine, it exploded like a volcano. I mean, it just went and all the coolant came gushing out into that whole cabin like a volcano. I was hiding around the corner, luckily, so it didn't get me here, but this arm was completely covered, and it turned red instantly. I was in St. Martin, and one of my friends, Roger, who's now passed away unfortunately, but he is a very big gardening aficionado in St. Martin, and he always had tons of plants around his house there, including aloe. I called him up instantly, said, Roger, I need some aloe. I got an emergency here, and we really need some aloe bad. So without question, he dropped the phone. He grabbed an entire plant out of his garden and whipped down to the marina and met us. And I started coating my arm with that instantly. It takes the heat off the burn instantly, and then you apply it about 3 times a day. And I never had a single blister, no peeling, nothing. And I mean, it was burned bad enough that, yeah, my arm was, it should have just melted off. I mean, we're talking overheated engine, coolant, not just water, but way past the point of boiling. And it healed with no residue, no residual marks, nothing. It was just gone. Within a week, my arm was just like nothing ever happened, and I was blown away. I knew that aloe was good for it, but I had no idea that it was going to be able to do that much good. Now we use aloe for all kinds of things. You can see Maddie's got one here, and this is bigger than we can grow on the boat, but we picked this guy up in the supermarket because we wanted to have a little extra around for some stuff we were working on, some new design or some new recipes with smoothies even and things like that, because this is a consumable element. You don't want to consume a lot of it all at once, but the gel in here has so many nutrients that if you do take in about 1 to 2 tablespoons per day as a maximum, we put it in smoothies now, because if you just eat it on its own, it tastes like crap. It's not good. But if you mix it with something else in smoothies, it's really, really good. And again, the health benefits are significant. Definitely worth having a look at. But inside, you'll see this gel. And we use this gel for everything. It's very slippery, very wet, very gummy. You can see that. But what it can heal is amazing. Like I said, this is bordering on a miracle plant. This is something that the drug trade has tried to reinvent for many years, because of course it'd be a lot less expensive for them to just manufacture a replica of the plant, just growing it with chemicals or something instead. But if you have this in nature, if you have it on your boat, it has so many good uses. So you can see we keep some here, we have some usually outside, even in our little indoor garden here. There's another plant of aloe, and it grows very well in shaded areas. You'll always find it in the rainforest, at the jungle, like in the floor of the jungle. It doesn't necessarily need to be out in broad daylight or anything like that. So those are great considerations for what you want to keep on board. Now, getting back to the other point of how do we keep our plants in position when we're sailing, you don't have to look very close at these ones to see what I've done. I mean, we've got them on this tray that sits on top of the galley, and it's the perfect little pedestal for them. You can see it's just an isolated little island tray, and it's a great spot to mount our plants where they're out of the way and they don't bother us by any stretch, and we don't bother them. But we keep them in, again, rectangular containers, low center of gravity, keep the soil as low as possible and the body weight of the plant as low as possible. And then we use these bungee cords from here all the way down underneath. You can see it just wraps around here and then up the other side and ties to the other side. So they're locked down from both sides, and that holds them in position so that we never have to worry about them when we're sailing. It's perfect. Over on this side of the boat, we've got some other plants I'm sure you've seen many times. I always keep these vines growing, and they always just keep growing all the way across the ledges here through the entire boat. And this vine used to cross around the whole boat, but of course our little tiki monster decided that it was a prime target and game of fun for her, so she destroyed the last one. Now this one, this is a really nice little guy, of course, aptly named a happy tree. So why wouldn't you want to have one of those, right? But this guy grows very well in here. He doesn't mind being in the indirect sunlight. He still stays nice and green. We don't have to put him outside, which is great. But he locks in position because these corners, this is where the speakers used to be for the sound system from the old stereo system I used to have. Of course, now everything is, you know, Bluetooth and subwoofers and all of that, so we don't use these speakers. I took them out, and you notice there's just a hole right there, and that's where this pod is just the right size. It just drops right down in the hole and sits there. So inadvertently it became a perfect place to put potted plants. We just managed to find the right plant pots and they fit in there great. So this is another plant we've got that loves to be inside. It does not like direct sunlight and it will grow like crazy. It's called Spatifilium, I believe, but it's a flower. And it will actually grow a white flower, a series of white flowers out the top. You can see some, it looks like, are actually starting to bud here, some new leaves up the top, and that's where the flowers will start to appear. Again, as you've likely seen before, we've got our little hammock here for fresh fruits and veggies that we keep on the side of the boat, and it's out of the way so it doesn't bother anybody, and everything just hangs there and stays fresh. So whenever we need it, we just pick something out of the hammock. Behind that, we've got our little cubby hole here that is part of our library. We've got stacks of books everywhere on the boat, but this is one of the library sections here. And we keep some plants in this little low center of gravity pot right here. So small pots inside one big holder. And this one here is another one of our Sansevieria plants for oxygen inside the boat, so it lives front there. And right behind that you can see we've got another oregano. Up front we've got another seedling for one of the vines that we like, so we always start them off small in a pot, and as they get bigger then we'll transplant them somewhere else on the boat. And behind that you can see we've got a big cluster of new aloe growing, so more aloe vera. It's a good thing to grow wherever you have space. So the only other place we got some plants is up in the forward cabin, because of course I love them in my sleeping space also. So I'll show you what we got up here. And just basically up in the two corners, you can see we've got some vines that are just starting out, one on port, one on starboard. But we have them in very low-lying baskets again. They're mounted behind the fiddle rails. You can see I've got these fiddle rails that are installed here now, and they hold them in, locked in position. And then we just grow the plants up into the headliner and across, so you can see where that one's starting to fill in now, and it'll come all the way across that window and over to here and make some nice green space inside the cabin that'll go really nice with our lovely new comforter. So that's all cool. So that all works very well up in our forward cabin and makes it a much happier space. Just nice to have some greens around you even when you're sleeping at night. Wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you see. You look up at the headliner and there's your little plants growing along. It's muy bueno. So that's the end of our little adventure on plants and Sophisticated Lady. That's what we have on board so far, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you learned something, and I hope you researched some of those plants I was telling you about, because if you are going to go long-term cruising or sailing, it is extremely worthwhile to have some plants on board, and for many purposes, practical or not practical, it's just nice to have. Just a few little tips and tricks to keep them in place so they don't cause you grief when you're sailing. That's all you need to know, and they will make your living environment much nicer. So enjoy, guys. Next time. Bye for now. And our first little tomatoes coming to fruition. Okay. First tomato, homegrown on Sophisticated Lady. I mean, that's kind of cool, no?